Welcome to Modern Goddess. Here we discuss everything mastering your mindset, wellness wisdom, upgrading your relationships so that you can unleash your divine goddess essence and live your authentic best self every single day. I'm your host, Cassie Aurora. Hi and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad that you have joined me today and I really hope you're having a great week. I'm doing lots of resting along with coaching my amazing clients, lots of beautiful astrology readings and Reiki treatments. I love how when you guys book in astrology readings, you turn around and you're like, hell yeah, I'm ready to take on the world. It's incredible. And something I'm really loving at the moment is how all of my one-to-one clients are diving so deep into like real deep healing work, and then in such a space that they're just bossing through life, they're up leveling every week, they're becoming more sensitive, they're becoming more loving. Like the amount of my clients that have gone from like being type A to super like in their feminine, being soft and chilling and just making loving choices for themselves in like literally 2 sessions, some of them. It's incredible. And for some of them, you know, I have a client, she's growing an online business right now, a holistic online business. And the energetic work she's doing with me, holy crap, like she's pulling in clients left, right and centre. She's unstoppable. I have no words. And I have the privilege of guiding women like this. And honestly, like when women come to me and they're like, I'm sick of doing this same stuff and keeping myself playing small. And then there's that moment where you just go, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they invest and they show up week after week and they're just transforming week after week. It's a life changing. And I'm just so honoured to guide and help these, support these women in their journey because it's incredible. And things like their income is changing, their health is changing, their energy is changing, the level of like psychic intelligence for some of them that's changing, the ability to really follow their own inner sovereignty. And literally, I always say it's like the path of the empress. They become the empress of their own life. It's incredible. And even those of you that have just booked readings, I love that when you book a reading, you're like, right, I'm going to take this, and you've confirmed what I really knew deep down I needed to do in my life, and this is not just Mickey Mouse stuff. Your astrology chart is like a projection of your inner archetypes, it's your soul projected onto a map, and I can read it for you and say, look, this is your potential. How freaking powerful is that? I love it. So what's new for me? Well, I've jumped ahead there. I'm just raving about all my astrology readings. I better tell you how you can book one if you do want one. You know the drill, guys. You can message me on Instagram. You can send me an email. The actual best way, if you're thinking, I don't know if this astrology or coaching is for me, but something in your body's going, yeah, I feel that. The best way for you would to be head to my website, read about it, check out my blogs, listen to a few more podcasts, or just literally message me and we'll have a chat about how these things could potentially help you. Because that's really what I'm here to do, is help you guys. And I know I can, so exciting. And if not, let's plod on with the podcast. So what's going on with me? I'm moving house in 3 weeks. Oh my God, I know. So exciting times. I'm moving into it's kind of funny. I think my boyfriend's like definitely getting the most out of this. So he lives at home with his mum. He had some personal circumstances so he's kind of living with her at the moment. Nothing bad. Well, I'm not going to go into it. It's his stuff. But it's like, it's not like he's doing it from real kindness. Anyway, and he has a property that he rents out. And I'm like, we lived together for the whole of lockdown, and then we had some time apart, which is probably much needed after all that intense time. But anyway, I'm in astrology. I'm in my sixth house annual perfection year, and it so happens for me it will be a year of moving. Sixth house is always my moon's there, but also in moving with my partner. But also sixth house is pets, and yeah, I'm really excited because I am moving into his house. I get to like decorate the room. I'm going to paint it all like in Venusian colours because I use feng shui and astrological colouring to really attract in abundance. There's a lot of work I do with manifestation, which is essentially magic. Let me know if you're interested in that. I can give you a few pointers. There's really good things you can do in your home. But yeah, I'm going to paint it all like it's going to be like a blend of all different tones of like white and soft greys and textures. I'm going to have like a canopy over my bed, white. And then I'm going to do like, there's a chimney breast which doesn't have a chimney. I'm going to do that in like a kind of mocha soft pink. And then have lots of plants. So I want touches of pink in there as well. I've decided I'm going to go for pink, not like bloody Powerpuff Girls pink, like a nice pink. And I'm really excited about that. And just my Pinterest is popping off. But yeah, I love decorating, and I'm going to go to IKEA. You can tell I'm really excited about this. And then I'm allowed to get a dog. I know. I haven't been able to have a dog for the last 5 years, and I lost my little pug a few years ago, and that really made me sad. So I was looking at rehomes today, and I saw this beautiful dog called Missy, and she looks really sad, like she needs a home. So yeah, that's the beauty of creating a life that you want and actually doing the work to get it, is then you can turn around and have the doggy and the job, and yeah. You guys can do that too. You can have the life you want. But a dog was a big thing for me. So guys, let's get real. Today's guest. This is a long podcast, but he is, oh my God, you just want to dive in and out this. His story, it's gripping. I was on the edge of my seat. We didn't even get through it all. There was so much more, but he's incredible. And let me just get his bio up here as usual. Professional as a poo. Right, let me get his bio up for you. I'm so useful. Okay, so anyway, his name's Craig, and I actually met him through Emma. Emma is one of my friends. I actually did a tarot reading for him like last year. I remember thinking, this guy's got some energy, but hey ho, so fun. But Craig, he'll tell you his story, but he is essentially a Reinvention Architect, an author. He is a TEDx speaker, and his mission is to help people who want to start over, rebuild, and reinvent themselves so that they can have the extraordinary life they've always wanted. And really, I think he's great. I mean, we've got some interesting plans in the pipeline between me, him, and Emma. I'm definitely going to go and visit them. I feel like they're my soul family, but you'll definitely tell he's a Scorpio moon. I mean, this podcast is already Scorpio AF, so if you're kind of not into depth, it's not depth that you can't understand, it's just these stories like freaking, God, it's insane. Talk about a Saturn return or what? And I will leave it to you. All I'm going to say is he goes to prison. He did fraud, turned his life around. It's crazy. We even talk. Okay, I'm not going to share anything else. You need to listen. So, you know where I am if you want to book a reading, you're interested in working with me with coaching and completely transforming your energetics in your life, hit me up. Check out Craig. He is on Instagram. All the details are in the show notes. I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. Get it in your ears. Share it with anyone else. Share it with your partners, because this guy has an incredible story. He's an advocate for males, definitely. And I hope you have the best day, the best week. Let me know what you think of this episode. I'm all here. Enjoy.
So the more that I share and the more that I'm open, I no longer have that stigma. I no longer have the story doesn't own me. And that's just through being as vulnerable as possible and just shining a light on everything. So that's why, I say to people, I'm like, nothing's off limits. Just go, have fun.
Yeah, it's good that so it's interesting because you have to be careful. I think we have to be, I think a lot of people share their story without giving it the reverence it deserves.
Interesting. What do you mean by that exactly? How do you, I think I
The
get
key,
what you're saying.
the key is that you said vulnerable. Not that I agree with the word vulnerable, but like we've become so shut off that speaking our truth is seen as a vulnerability, and speaking like the truth of what happened to us is like a vulnerability. And I think it is like a gift. I do think it's a gift when we share it. But some people, I've noticed, can really like just say their story. I used to do this. It's like, yeah, I got abused and then this happened, that happened, but it like with no reverence for like the actual story.
Okay, I get it. Totally understand now. Yeah, and I also think that vulnerability has also turned into something like, how do I say this? It's almost like it gets abused a little bit because people know that there's so much value in it. And I think that it is not always portrayed to me as true vulnerability or true authenticity, which is also a very dangerous word as well. And I
Yeah.
think that gets thrown about a little bit too much as well. Authenticity and vulnerability, you abused way too much. And I think
Yeah.
there's a fine line in there where there's just being vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable to get attention is not being vulnerable. That is just being, I think, a little bit self-serving and trying to, I don't know, get followers or get business or whatever it may be. And I think, being
Yeah.
vulnerable to be of service, I think that is a big differentiator.
Yeah, I think it's sharing your story with like authority. Like I could,
Yes.
if I was thinking today, should I share my experience in the last week where I've been to like hell and back with my own internal shifts? And I'm like, well, who does it actually benefit? It doesn't, like, and it makes me seem like for those that don't understand the journey of healing, it's like you just haven't got an authority, on it.
Yep.
Hang on.
I mean, it sounds intriguing. I'm intrigued by your journey through hell and back this past week.
Oh my God. Well, Amazon's come to the door live on the pod. So that's Helen back. Um, well, oh, I shall share. Oh, yes. Hi. Oh, sorry, you dropped your thing. Sorry, I was working.
Thank you.
Oh, God. Well, I've pissed him off. Never mind. Oh, please, everyone. At least I've got my 100% cacao. Yeah, so it's all it is so I've basically moved back home, and that's just brought up loads of inner abandonment wounds, like, but I did it to myself. It was good. I had to move back home. I had to work through those parts of me that were terrified and like have attached to this story that everyone leaves and everyone abandons me, which isn't true. But like the part of me that can't even conceptualize that like screams at me, and it gets to like 7 o'clock at night and I could literally put my clock by it and it comes up and it's like everyone leaves and I'm alone, and I'm just like, oh, here we go. So then I have to go into that part of me because that part of me for some reason it's trapped in a time where that happened, but it's like keeps playing that trauma out, and I just had to like be with it for a few days. And then once it was that, I just got loads of anger come up, and then I had, yeah, loads of stuff came up. So it's like, what do you share of that and how do you even put it in words? I'm like, well, I think when we just go through it like as coaches and practitioners, I kind of think it just um means that we're stepping into our client's shoes a little bit. And every time that we relapse, if you want to use that word or whatever, it's just another It's like another opportunity to see it from a different angle. It's like another insight. I always say, like, old friend, dear friend, what are you teaching me? What are you actually teaching me? Because then it's like, am I just falling into the arms of complacency and victimhood, or am I actually going to be like, come on, okay, we need to let this story go? And that's hard. Like, I think that's hard to navigate. Are you being complacent, or are you genuinely relapsing? It's like, ooh.
And I think, I mean, it's so easy with that to get into the overthinking. You
Yeah.
know, like you said, am I being complacent? Am I doing this? Like, so easy to go down that rabbit hole. Something that I've been doing for myself. So I was 2 weeks ago, I was contemplating my own mortality.
Oh
And I
God.
don't know where this came from. Well, I have Memento Mori tattooed on my forearm,
Oh my God.
facing me. So I mean, it's there all the time. But for some reason, I flashed back to when I was 20 years old. I had to go to the neurologist. I was getting these headaches that felt like the back of my head was going to explode. They would just come on in a second, in a flash, and just debilitating. So I told my father, and we went to the neurologist and got an MRI. And it turns out I have a very thin artery wall in my brain that is
Oh.
not repairable, not anything. And I'm going to be perfectly candid here. Part of the reason it got acted up, I was a young, dumb 20-year-old on steroids. So
Oh.
I believe that was, and I couldn't actually explain to the neurologist any of that because my dad wouldn't leave me alone with the neurologist, and I wasn't going to admit that in front of my father. But that came to me. I think about it every couple of years because I know what caused it. I know keeping exercise and just keeping in good shape is going to keep the pressure off the artery wall. But for some reason, 2 weeks ago, that flashed into my head when I was contemplating my mortality. And I said to myself, I was like, I have a thin artery wall in my brain and it's a ticking time bomb. And I stopped myself and I wrote that sentence out and I cut it in half and I said, which is true, which is a story. It's
Yeah.
true. I have a thin artery wall. The ticking time bomb, my neurologist never said that. I made that up on
Yeah.
the spot. And I said, and I wrote story and I pointed arrows to, what was true and what was the story. And I've been doing that a lot, either with clients and with myself. When I catch myself in those things, I was like, what? I sent a text to a friend and I haven't heard back in a day or two. They're pissed at me. I sent a text to a friend, truth. They're pissed at me. That's the story. And it just kind
Yeah.
of has been so helpful in putting the brakes on those things, when my mind starts going on those tangents.
Yeah. I was saying this to a client only this morning. It's like, and I can do this. And I think anyone that's had like A level, I don't even think you've even got to have trauma. I think it's all the nature of the mind to, I don't know, put these mad ideas to something that is like unanswered. I don't know. So she talking about an example with her partner, and I've been through this exact thing where people don't communicate fully, and then there's no clarity, and so then you fill in the gaps with your brain, and the filling in the gaps of what we don't know is where the things get very much warped. And like you're saying, oh, it's a ticking time bomb as a story, and the story is where we get all our dread from. Like I do the same thing. I lie there in bed at night, every night. Probably my last thought before sleep is, I could die in my sleep, I won't wake up, I have a heart attack now. And it's like, well, that is true, but it doesn't help me. Like, we tell ourselves some strange stuff. And I always think that's the biggest question, like you say, exactly as you said, like, what is truth? Is it true? No. Like,
Right.
mm,
And I mean, but kind of like you said, something with the heart attack, not to scare you, but I mean, technically that could be we don't know, and we don't
yeah,
have any control over it. We have
no,
no idea, that whole idea of we could die tomorrow, we could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but
true.
we don't know.
It's
I
so
think
true.
that's, and not knowing can also lead to such just fear, and I think that's when we circle back to the present moment. Just, I
Yeah.
could get hit by a bus tomorrow and get into panic. And what are you going to do? Never cross the street again?
It's
Come back to the
true.
present moment and what's happening right now. I'm not in any danger, I'm completely safe, and just trying to stay in that present moment. Easier said than done, because the mind loves zipping to the past and zipping to the future. But just yeah,
I
not our
know it's the
minds.
path of like the Scorpio, to like just I don't know. It's like because our minds, I think, are powerful, and there's this. I think at the bottom of everything with Scorpio, it's like just it's death. We've got this. We have. I really think we have a fascination with the concept of death, and like and control, and I don't know. Like I've definitely noticed the theme with Scorpios. Like it doesn't matter if it's death of like a physical death. It's metaphorical death and endings and knowing that nothing lasts and everything needs to be recycled, and it's like in the back of your mind, well, when will this actually finish? And I'm always like, that's always going on. It's quite, and I used to think that was really normal to be constantly in that state of mind, but I don't, it's not. Like I would prefer to be way less intense in my mind. But think how much, a lot of people's anxieties are generally rooted in similar things, the things they can't control. And whilst there's, I think there's use in those parts of us that are like, the part that's like, well, I could get hit by a bus. What is that even teaching me? Oh, it's teaching me maybe I need to be more present. Maybe it's teaching me that I am not living enough, or I don't know.
That's actually where I was going with it, was thinking like, oh, I'm going to get hit by a bus. And it's like, okay, well, am I doing what I'm meant to be doing right now in this moment? Or am I sitting on the couch watching Netflix? And
Yeah.
when I want to be doing something else. There's nothing wrong with sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, but
No.
if you have this big giant dream and desire and you're not going for it and you're afraid of doing it, and instead you're watching Netflix on the couch, then I think there's that missed opportunity, and that bus becomes a lot more frightening.
Yeah.
So
I think it's always the standpoint. Like, for example, my nap before this podcast, like I know I can't get anything done today, but it doesn't mean I'm like giving up, but I think, if it was every day, then I will be using my condition as an excuse then,
But I think isn't that so interesting though? Just pointing to what you just said, you're not going to get anything done today. You're recording a podcast, so that right there.
Yeah. I've done 2 clients and a podcast, but yeah, but with me, I'm like, right, I'm going to do a reading. I'm studying for my NTP. I'm doing 2 astrology courses, and like the guilt that we feel for not being productive. That's something I definitely, as I think, have had to learn that the less I do, the more productive I am.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's in Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, there's to do less better. It's one of my favorite lines in there.
That's my new mantra.
That's your new mantra? I love it.
Less better. I'll forget it tomorrow and I'll have a different one. But yeah, it's true though. Like you are right. You're speaking my language. Okay, so do you want to? I'm already recording.
Oh, I saw the little button come up, and I've listened to enough of your stuff. I know what you do. I was like, I know.
You're the same as Emma, man. Emma was like, I know your MO, and I was just like, but it's better than being like, and we're live in 3, 2, 1, because
totally. No, this was great. I'm by the way, I mean, I saw the button come up, but I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, and it's kind of funny. You get a little sly look on your face when you reach for the button to hit record.
I know.
I was like, she's up to something. I could see you reaching for it, and I'm like, she's up to something. And then I saw the light come up.
No, that's just you, because people that aren't a bloody Scorpio would not notice, but because we're like everything intense. What's going on now? No, it's true. Yeah, people always know. They'll probably know, like if I'm not looking at the screen, they can always tell as well. Okay, cool. So as in like at the video screen. Cool. So Let's get to it. So, do you want to introduce yourself to my listeners so they know who this intriguing man is they've been listening to the last 15 minutes? And yeah, share what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Craig Stanland, and I am an author, a speaker, and a reinvention architect. I help people whose lives have fallen apart, and not even just fallen apart, but people who want to start over, people who want to rebuild, recreate, and reinvent their lives. I help them do that because I myself, and I know we're going to get into this, I've been to rock bottom and lost absolutely everything, and I had to rebuild my life. And I've spent the past 6 years doing that. So my mission and my passion now is to help people to do the same, to know that they can, wherever they are in their lives, they can always start over and they can create something extraordinary for themselves. It takes a little bit of work, but it's possible.
Oh, this is very exciting. You're on the path of the Phoenix, the Scorpio path, 100%. So, so tell me, Reinvention Architect, rock bottom. You need to talk about this. So, I mean, I know your story, but I want like the full.
Oh, I'll bring you back to the kind of the beginning. Let's go back to 2012. In 2012, I had what most people, by most standard metrics, I had what everybody would consider it all. I had an extremely successful corporate career. I owned 4 homes. I drove beautiful cars. I wore super expensive watches. I ate at the best restaurants in Manhattan and Connecticut. I was married to an unbelievable, amazing, incredible, stunning woman. I mean, I literally, I did have it all. And then October 1st, 2013, I had just started my new job. Our biggest competitor had wooed me away with a really nice pay package. I was 2 weeks into my job. I drove into the city. I took the elevator up to the 37th floor, and I was putting my stuff on my desk. I was unpacking my laptop bag, and I put my phone down, and I saw that I had 1 missed call. And you know, you look at it when you're like, I had my phone on me the whole time. How did I miss that call? And I see it's a voicemail. So I listened to the voicemail in my brand new office, surrounded by strangers, and this is what the voicemail was. Mr. Stanland, this is Special Agent McTiernan with the FBI. We are at your residence and have a warrant for your arrest. You need to call us and come home immediately, or we will issue a arrest warrant with the federal marshals. So that's when the bottom completely fell out of my life. I drove an hour home, dreading the fact that I knew that the FBI was waiting for me. And I was arrested by the FBI for 1 count of mail fraud.
What's
eventually, that is, mail fraud is kind of a blanket term. I was using, to commit the fraud that I was doing, I was using UPS boxes. So that falls under UPS and FedEx. I was using the different mailboxes to perpetuate my fraud. I would have equipment delivered to me that I was later reselling for a profit. And so that falls under the blanket of mail fraud, you know,
Why
mail
is
fraud.
that fraud? If you buy something and then sell it.
So I will explain. It was a little bit, I broke the law. I was wrong. I was very wrong. In my corporate job, I had started at the bottom. You know, I was at one point a personal trainer, and I became very friendly with my client and her husband. And he said, "Hey, how would you like to make, you know, 4 times what you're making now?" I said, "Yeah, I would." And that was what started my corporate career. I took this massive pay cut, started at the absolute bottom, but I learned the inside out and the intricacies of the entire system. So I worked for 4 years, barely making anything, and then finally got promoted to the position that I was enterprise sales executive. So at this point, I knew how absolutely everything worked. And the company that I worked for, that we were partners with, there's a warranty policy that you can get on the devices that we sold. That warranty policy covers all the equipment, and they will ship you a brand new piece if you ship them the faulty one back. So I purchased a bunch of equipment, I purchased warranties on it, and I was filing false claims, getting brand new equipment delivered to me, and I was buying third party or used equipment off of eBay, and I was sending that back to them. So I'd done the math and figured that I could sell the new equipment for more than I was buying the old equipment for. And I created aliases, I had fake company names. I was so in the wrong. It was beyond ridiculous.
So how did
That's
they find, like, how did they find this? I'm not being funny, like, there's bigger things that people are doing in the world that are probably worse than that. Like, okay, am I
the
just being, no, I don't think it's that bad. I'm like, do you know what? You've got a clever brain and you found a way around the system. I don't think it's that bad. And plus, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Like selling all that stuff to me, I'm like, you should keep the profit because that is a lot of work. I know it's
the
wrong, but
it was totally wrong. And you're not alone. A lot of people do hear that and they do look at me and they're like, that's it. And what I try not to do in that situation is it doesn't sound like a lot, but I still broke a lot of tenets and laws. And I think, what I did was also morally, ethically, and I think as a society, it may not seem like much, but when we cross those gray lines that may seem gray to somebody else, it starts blurring the line altogether. And, for me, I have to take full ownership and responsibility of it. It
yeah,
may
yeah.
not appear that bad, but it definitely was. And in regards to how they caught me, for anybody listening, if you want to commit fraud, don't do it against one of the largest technology companies in the world that is smarter than you, that has a team of people that are equipped to find fraud like that. I got a little complacent in committing the fraud. I would use a lot of the same language in the emails that I sent. They have algorithms, they have AI, they have things that will pick up on anomalies in the system. So they were on to me. I committed the fraud for just under a year. They were on to me about 6 months into it. And yeah, it was, and then the FBI had, I did it for about 10 months. So the FBI had about, I think, 4 months of investigating me.
Why? Sorry, I know it's in your story, but like, why do you think you did that? Because you had everything on paper.
I think that's an awesome question because that actually gets to the core of everything. I had everything. I had this amazing, like I said, amazing, incredible, beautiful wife, just a beautiful soul. I didn't feel worthy of her. I didn't feel worthy of my success. I didn't feel worthy of my nice cars. I didn't feel worthy of my $12,000 watches. I didn't feel worthy of anything. I was always in my company. I was always, number one, two, or three in sales. I was always at the top. And I spent so much time in absolute fear that I was going to get called out as the phony that I felt that I was. Pure imposter syndrome, even though I was at the top. And even though I had a lot of confidence in what I was doing, it was almost like a false confidence. I felt empty. I never felt like I was enough. I never felt worthy. And that unworthiness, and that not feeling enough, that inadequacy, it just drove so much of my behavior, and it turned into greed as well. There's a very addictive quality to being able to go into, I would go in with my wife, we would go into Saks and I could buy her Christian Louis Vuittons like it was going out of style. You don't ever want to be the guy who's friendly with the shoe salesman at Saks and know him on a first name basis and his face lights up when you walk in. That's not necessarily, that's not where I ever want to be again. But I could go into a jewelry store. I could buy whatever watch I wanted, whenever I wanted. And there's an addiction behind that. And that's where the greed really starts fueling. So here I am feeling unworthy and trying to really what I was. I mean, I was like it was a broken glass and I was trying to fill it with my things. And that's never going to happen. It's physically impossible. And it just, it becomes a question of more and more and more and more. And it's just never enough because I'm never going to know that I'm enough going down that road. So that's really what started everything.
Mm. And you can't find, you will never find enough outside of yourself. It's like, we look, it's all we're taught to do. We're born and we're taught everything is outside of you. All the answers are outside. You go to school, the answers on the blackboard. You, I don't know, you want to know something, you ask your mum, they tell you. Like, there's no, I don't know, I think we are taught that. And it's no wonder in a system that doesn't teach you to feel good from the inside, and like a system that sells this idea that having all these things, like every billboard you see, like say you see an alcohol commercial and it's like a man with like, I don't know, like a posh drink, and there's like a hot babe and he's in a suit and he looks all suave, and then every advert is like this masculine feminine, so it's like, you know, to be happy you've got to have money, you know, we know the story, and it's no wonder. What do you think, like, it sounds very much like your north node's like in the second house or something, by the way, because it's like the mouth that never stops eating and it's never satisfied, and usually it's the thing in our astrology that will contribute to our crisis point, because we go too far and it will swing you and rip you the other direction. So I'll be very interested to see where that is for you, because usually it's like a balance.
Okay.
So I'm interested, like, I know we kind of haven't got through all your story and stuff, but I guess I'm interested in, what was the feelings that you would go through, like, I know this is a really particular question, but I think people get this when they, like, there's some kind of thing that goes when, before you buy something or make a big purchase, or you feel like you're going to buy something that's going to make you feel better, and it's like, I feel crap, or I don't feel. What is that thing that makes you want to keep having? Did that, like in your childhood, was there like scarcity? Were you kind of taught that money didn't grow on trees? Like, what was your belief around things and money? That, was there anything there that led to that?
Super interesting, because I actually, I was very fortunate. I grew up, my father's a very successful attorney. I grew up in a beautiful neighborhood. I was never lacking for anything. Scarcity was not a concern. Yeah, my father did raise me, and so did my mother, raise me in such a way that, you know, my father at one point said, he was like, you know, these are my things. They're not your things. Kind of, but it was, you know, more of a teaching lesson, if you will. And, you know, I started working at the age of 11, you know, mowing lawns and doing landscaping. So I had respect for money, but you know, I definitely grew up, I think it's a great quality in my father, but I could see where a lot of my behavior came from. If you were going to buy something, when I give you an example, I asked for a remote control car for Christmas. I asked for maybe the second lowest variety that they made. My father, way pre-internet, did all this research, and he bought me the best one that they make, the most expensive, the best one. And that's always what he did. It's always, if you're going to buy something, you're going to get the best. It's you know, always get the most expensive, the best value. It doesn't always have to be the most expensive, but it's like, what is the best value? What is going to be? And a lot of times the value does correlate with the overall dollar amount. So I had that in terms of money, but there was also, I was always one of the shortest kids in class. I was always one of the smarter kids in class. You know, I had big glasses, big thick glasses. I had a bowl haircut, and so you might guess where this is going. I was bullied a lot.
Oh.
I was bullied quite a bit, to the point, you know, I had, you know, my jacket used to get thrown in the garbage on a regular basis. You know, somebody would take my jacket and throw it in the garbage, and it just, always having that and just being bullied and wanting to be part of the you know, the cool kids. And something really interesting happened. The coolest kid in school came up to me one day. He said, "Hey, you live in my town, don't you?" And I said, "I do." He goes, "Do you want to ride bikes today?" I said, "Oh my God, yeah, I want to ride bikes with the coolest kid in school." And we became friends. And next thing you know, I'm now friends with the cool kids. I'm, you know, starting to go to the parties. The guy who used to throw my jacket in the garbage came up to me and apologized to me, and actually said, "I'm so sorry I treated you that way. I had no idea that you were cool. You know, and it was like, it was just, my world changed, but I never felt that I was a part of them. I always felt like an outsider. I never felt like I belonged. And that guy who threw my jacket in the garbage actually said to me one time, he's like, Craig, he's like, you got to understand something. He's like, you're one of us. He's like, stop with this. Like, you belong in the group, which I thought was really, really sweet of him to actually do, but I still didn't believe it. And the reason I tell that story is it just brings me back to that feeling when you purchase something. You know, now here I am, I still have that childhood mentality of not fitting in or anything, but now I've got money, you know, and I can walk into a store, I can go to the best restaurant, I can order a $300 bottle of wine. And it's just like making up for, and I'm not using it as an excuse, but it's just, you know, I think that was a part of the dynamic. And that feeling was, I get to be the man, you know, I get to step up and I get to be the man, and I could do this. I could do these things for my wife. She didn't ask for any of it. You know, she was fine without, but it was just like, look what I can do. And I think that was a huge component of in my cycle of just purchasing and wanting.
Yeah, and like when you have the money and you're able to make that purchase, that fragment of you that's still 13, 12, whatever, having his jacket chucked in the bin, all of a sudden he's like, it's a big middle finger, like, fuck you, I'm the powerful one now. No wonder you didn't fit in, because the only reason they accepted you into your group was based on maybe like you'd like, because of, I don't know, you were able to go and do the bike thing and it was all these external things maybe. But if they rejected you before, you've always got that in the back of your mind at that age,
Right.
like that, you know. Yeah, it's like, you belong now. Well, you can tell me, but deep down in your soul, any kind of self-doubt you've got is going to be like, no, you know, and that will eat away at you. And that's when it comes out in weird ways. There's no wonder people are so low on themselves, they end up with disordered eating, spending habits, drug addictions. You know, it's all about a false sense of power, and again, external.
And I think it's the word that you used before, control. You
Mm.
know, it's that power, it's that control. It's trying to have control over something that really, in a sense, there's no control over. And it's that false illusion of control that is so easy to get sucked into, you know, to think that we have control over so many things. And it's just such a false illusion. I think, is it Pema Chodron? I forget in which one of her books, but she says that we walk around thinking that we're on solid ground. She's like, the sooner that you understand that there is no solid ground underneath your feet, the more at ease and at peace you're going to be. You're not walking on solid ground. You know, I mean, there is no ground, I think, is almost what she says. Might
Yeah,
be, it's Taking the Leap, I think might be the book. I can't remember, but I reread it a few times and I love it.
I'll have to check it out. um there's some kind of quote, it's like, relax, nothing is in your control. I think it's like a quote that I had on my tea bag, but I think like the Buddha said it. I genuinely don't think the actual Buddha said that. Like, I don't think that's what someone at that, but whatever. Um, but it's true. Like, but sometimes the universe likes to show us in a really, I think I know I keep saying it's a Scorpio thing, but it actually is like, my awakening, my crisis point was not subtle. It was like, I'm going to take you to hell, because that's what you need to see. So you're driving home, the feds are at your door, your stomach's probably doing absolute somersaults. What happens then?
It was, so it was about an hour drive from Manhattan to where I lived in Connecticut. So I had an hour to think about this. On the way home, I called my wife. And eventually I found out what happened. So the FBI, even though they were tracking me, they didn't realize that I had started a new job. At my old job, I used to work out of the house. So when they raided the house, they assumed that I was home. Somehow it slipped through the cracks that I had started this new job. So unfortunately, I found out that my wife opened the door. When the FBI comes, they come guns blazing. She opened the door to 15 agents pointing shotguns, assault rifles, and pistols at her face and her chest. And then they executed a search warrant and, went through our home piece by piece. So that was happening as I was driving home. So, and she didn't obviously feel comfortable speaking on the phone. I was like, she didn't answer for about 6 or 7 rings, and those rings were just pure torture, just unbelievably pure torture. And when she picked up, just was, Craig, what's happening? And the pain and the fear in her voice just ripped through me. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Call my father. And so I'm calling my father. I said, the FBI is at my house. He's like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. I was in pure denial. I literally was in pure denial, where I was like, this is a misunderstanding. This will get sorted out. When I get there, we'll have a sit down. We'll sort it out. I knew that was all bullshit, but it was just my mind going into that protective mode. And then I was like, I need an attorney. I don't have a criminal attorney on file, but I have a real estate attorney. So I call up my real estate attorney, explain what's happening. Turns out they have a white collar attorney in their office. So I was able to get in touch with him, and I felt better about that. But I drive in. I lived in a gated community. And so I go through the gates of my community. I take a right-hand turn to go down the hill. And that's when it all came into view. And it was just out of a movie. There were cop cars. There were unmarked cars. They were like, they almost looked like a SWAT truck. I mean, it was ridiculous. And all these guys with the blue jackets, with the yellow FBI lettering.
Oh my God.
And I literally remember thinking to myself, like, this popped in my head. I was like, oh wow, they really do wear those jackets. I've seen them in the movies. That's real. They do wear those. And I pull up. They used their bodies to control the movement of my car. They kind of made a little bit of a wall to pull me into what wasn't even really a parking spot. They kind of just lined up. So I, without even pointing, they just directed me with their bodies. As soon as I started opening up the door, they controlled my movement again with their bodies, and they just wouldn't allow me to open the door fully up. I got out really slowly because they were on top of me. They said, state your name, turn around. They frisked me, turn back around, empty your pockets into the front seat. So I emptied it. A guy comes running over with a Ziploc bag and a marker, starts throwing everything into the bag, marking everything. And I said, I was so concerned about my wife. Can I see my wife? Can I please see my wife? No, you cannot.
Oh my God.
Is she okay? She's fine. You don't need to see her. And it was just, they're on top of me. And then this was really crappy. My neighbors were looking out the window, and I remember making eye contact with my neighbor, Carl. He's peeking behind the blinds and looking at what's going on. And when I made eye contact with him, he ducked away like he was a scared little kid. And it was right at that point where the FBI agent said, turn around, and he pulled out his cuffs. And I looked at him and I was like, there's no need to cuff me. I was like, you can see me. I'm not a threat. And he said, it's procedure. We have to. So he turned me around and he slapped those cuffs on. And the sound of handcuffs is so visceral and it's so raw. I felt so defenseless and helpless with my arms pinned behind my back. It was just, it was a debilitating feeling. And then they just like in the movies, I had a black unmarked car, fully tinted out, and they opened up the door. They grabbed my head, they guided it into the car, and agent got in the front seat and an agent got in the back seat with me, and they started questioning me. The agent in the back seat was doing he was doing the majority of the questions, and he said, who else was involved? Tell us now, make your life easy. Who else was involved? Nobody else was involved. Bullshit. There was no way somebody did all of this by themselves. This was way too much work for one person to have been able to accomplish on their own. There was a team of people. We found multiple toothbrushes in your guest bathroom. So just tell us who it is. And I was like, we have company over a lot. We have family, so we keep spare toothbrushes. Like, nobody else was involved. And he then said, this really got me. He said, how about that pretty little wife of yours? And I can't, it made my blood boil. I mean, if I could have, I would have possibly attacked him. but I just remember just being, my arms are tied behind my back. I can't do anything. I'm in the back of an FBI unmarked car. Like, what am I going to do? I said, no, she had nothing to do with it. You must understand that. And then he asked where I was on September 11th. And this is interesting. One of my clients, they were devastated by the attacks on September 11th. So I always remember going to a charity event that they held every year on September 11th. And so it's, my mind, I'm not thinking all that clearly because I'm scared shitless at this point. But I said, September 11th, I said, I was at my client's charity event. Bullshit. Don't fucking lie to me. It's not how you want to start this. I was like, I thought that's where I was. That's where I go every September. I was like, I invoked my right to silence at that point when I realized it was taking that turn. I said, I can't, I'm not going to continue answering questions. So I invoked, and he made me feel a little guilty about doing that. Like I was making the wrong move. He's like, you do that, I can't help you down the line. And I said, no, I want to do that. And then he did ask me, he said, can I ask one more question? I said, okay. He said, why did you do it? And I remember saying to him, I said, I needed the money. I said, and that's all I'm going to say.
Wow. Did you genuinely feel like you needed the money? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, like,
Please.
really in it, but that's the first thing. Did you genuinely feel like you needed the money? Like,
no, yes and no. So my job was very interesting, where it was, what I was selling was very much it was becoming more and more of a commodity. So the margins on it were shrinking. So my paychecks were shrinking, but my desire to buy things was that addictive quality that I was talking about before. That was just increasing. So I've got my paychecks decreasing, my addiction increasing. It was just a horrible combination. So I did, in a sense, feel like I needed the money. It wasn't until much later where I realized all the other things. But at that time, I was like, oh, I needed the money.
yeah, in your reality, like based
Yes.
on what you've known, yeah, it's all very well saying, oh, people have got less than you. Well, no, like it's where you are. Oh my God. This is the best story I've had on the podcast. And like, I know it's terrible, but I'm like, it's seriously fucking interesting. What did it feel like having freedom and literally feeling like, kind of like you're on this map? You're not feeling like king of the world, because clearly you've got like some imposter syndrome, but feeling like you've got it all on paper, to then having you literally a piece of meat with handcuffs on, and you like literally being questioned as if you're some kind of, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what they did, but I think they were somehow, like, it sounds like they were trying to almost make you more corrupt than you were, like, like the way he's going at the questions and picking on your wife, like playing mind games, when you might have just been like, all right, yeah, like, I've fucked up here a bit. Do you know?
I do.
Do that? Did that? Like, what's that like, being gaslit and kind of like, no, you're not telling the truth. You're not telling the truth, when you're like already fessing up. What does that feel like? It's weird.
It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening. It is the hands behind the back. I know he keeps saying that, but it's just, there is something so, being tucked into the corner of this car that I can't really see out of because the tinting was that dark. And I'm just alone with this guy who I'm already intimidated by. And he's gaslighting me and asking these questions. So I was just scared. I was just utterly frightened. And I also, the uncertainty. I don't even know. So I'm in this car. Where am I going to go? Where do we go? What happens from here? I'm going to jail. It's just the mind, kind of what we were talking about before, the mind going off to the races. So it was just sheer terror.
Yeah.
Sheer terror and uncertainty is what it feels like. And mixed with the anger, how dare you say that about my wife when she had absolutely nothing to do with it. And it was just not being able to do a damn thing about it, and knowing, like you said, you mentioned freedom. It's just zero freedom, physically and mentally.
It's humiliating. And it's like, a bigger version of someone throwing your jacket in the bin. It's like, you're a piece of shit.
It's, I'll share with you, humiliating. It
Did
gets, go ahead.
Did you get naked? Is that what you're going to share with me? When you have to get naked?
It is, and it's not just naked. It is, so so where the car brought me, they bring me to, up in Connecticut, to the courthouse for my arraignment. You know, I had no idea where I was going. And they bring me into the catacombs of the courthouse that has cells and all this stuff. And we walk into this room, and there are these two dudes standing there. One looks like a biker. He's got a red beard. He's got tattoos on him. He's kind of jacked, and he looks frightening. And the other guy is straight military. He's got the, you know, high and tight haircut, khaki pants with the Izod shirt tucked into it. They were the federal marshals. And I was then handed over to them. The FBI stayed in the room to do the paperwork. So I got my DNA taken, you know, the cotton swabs in the mouth, fingerprints, the mugshot, and then came the naked part. And it's not just getting naked. It was, you know, stand over there, strip everything down. So I stripped down to my boxers. The guy looks at me, he's like, everything. I was like, okay. So I'm standing there, I'm covering myself. And the series of instructions that they give you is run your fingers through your hair, fish hook your mouth and open up your mouth, stick out your tongue, pull your ears forward, hands out to the sides, palms up, palms down, pick your foot, pick your right foot up, pick your left foot up. Then it was pick up your testicles.
Oh.
Yeah, and then it also gets, we're going to get very graphic here, but I mean,
yeah,
just talking about humility.
If you don't like it, guys, skip forward 30 seconds, but I'm here for it.
But then it was so interesting. He said, turn around, spread your ass cheeks, squat, and cough. And I for drug, exactly, for things smuggled up my bum, if you will. So I understood each and every word individually, but I've never heard them put in that context.
Well,
so
yeah.
I said, I'm sorry, what? Turn around, spread your ass cheeks, squat, and cough. I said, I'm still not getting it. And he just screamed it at me. So I did what I was told. And I have to stand there. They take your clothes piece by piece, and they wring them out as if they're trying to find the last drop of water on earth. So I'm standing there just buck naked as this guy painstakingly goes through each item of my clothing, each sock, each boxer, you know, my pants, my t-shirt that I was wearing, my button-down shirt. I mean, everything. It was so weird. Even after all that, like, you know, I was talking about, I was ruled by materialism and buying things. I do remember as he was doing my pants, I was like, he's fucking up my John Barbados pants. I was
There's Leo. There's the Leo.
I was actually annoyed that he's messing up my John Barbados pants. And I remember thinking, I was like, I'm standing here naked in the federal marshal's jail cell. Who gives a crap about my John Barbados pants? But it was just, that was humiliating. And that's not, I had to do that more than once through the entire process too.
God. All right. This was, man. I'm trying to visualize, firstly, spreading your ass cheeks, turn around, squat and cough. Like, if someone told me that and had just been arrested, I'll be like, sorry, I can't do that. Yeah. So, wow. It's horrible. That's dehumanizing, you know? It's just like, I mean, I'm not going to get into that because it's going to I'm going to be speaking into something that's way different to what it is. But one of the things I can't stand is when people are just completely dehumanized. And I think like we see that on such a massive level now, just like being treated like cattle, you know? But yeah, I'm not going to get into that. So let's swing. So you obviously ended up then being sentenced. You pleaded guilty, right?
I did. I pled guilty.
Yeah, probably for the best.
You know, I was still in that bit of a denial. So when I was talking to my lawyer, I was like, you know, I was looking at the criminal complaint and I said, you know, that's not quite right. You know, I'm picking out like a sentence at a time, you know, and it was these small little things that, they weren't right, but they didn't impact the overall case. So I was sitting here grasping for straws, basically.
Yeah.
That's not quite right. And I said, we should maybe fight it. And my attorney was like, no, you're going to lose. And when you lose, you're going to get a worse sentence than if you plead. When you plead, you at least have a chance at getting a better sentence. So, just plead guilty. So I did. And then eventually was, sentencing was a whole nother scenario.
Yeah. What did you get?
I got 24 months. So 2 years of federal prison. And if you don't mind, I would love to just the in between getting arrested and actually reporting to prison might be one of the most utterly frightening moments of my life. I was very fortunate. My process only took 10 months from getting arrested to reporting to prison. That's actually, I had friends in prison who had 7 years between getting arrested and actually reporting to prison. So their life was in limbo for 7 years. So I'm so fortunate that it was that fast. But in those 10 months, in the beginning, I didn't know, based on my criminal background and the nature of my crime, what kind of prison I would go to. I just assumed that I was going to what we see on TV. So I spent about 4 or 5 of those 10 months in sheer utter terror. For anybody listening, I am a whopping 5'4", and at the time I weighed, I don't know, 135 pounds. I don't cast a big shadow. I'm not a big dude. I literally thought I was going to get raped and beaten every single day. I spent 4 to 5 months in sheer terror that I was going to get literally raped and beaten every single day. I was like, what am I going to possibly do to vend myself? And finally, somebody told me that, like, most likely, based on the nature of your crime and no criminal background, you're going to go to the lowest security prison, so your safety should be completely fine. And I was like, that was a huge relief, but I still didn't know. So it was just, there's so many, you get arrested, you plead guilty, then there's sentencing. And then at sentencing, a lot of people don't know this. I get sentenced. There's 2 months between getting sentenced and actually reporting to prison. You don't, right after sentencing, you just don't immediately go into prison. I was allowed to go home. I don't know. I really don't know why that works, but I think part of it is I'd also posted when I was originally arrested, my wife at the time and my father co-signed my bail, my $100,000 bail. And so I was out on bail. And I think that was part of the reason I was able to go home. So I had 2 months just a smidge over 2 months between being sentenced and actually reporting to prison. So I had 2 months to, it sounds crazy, but I was going to go away for 2 years. My wife and I were trying to jam 2 years worth of preparation into 2 months. Like, she couldn't afford to live in our home without my pay coming in. She had just launched a new business, and just trying to, taxes and finding her a place to live, trying to literally 2 years of planning in 2 months was insane.
Yeah. And so before you're going to jail, are you living at home, or you're literally in like some weird?
I was at home. So I was still at home, which was great. But there was something, so after the FBI, I give them credit. They were very respectful in their search. They weren't like the movies. They didn't come in and tear things apart. They did go through everything. And, over the next several months, I would find evidence bags, or things were slightly askew. So there's just these like little landmines that we would discover just as a pure, not that we needed a reminder because it was a dark cloud over our lives, but there were just these things that would come up to remind us. So our home, after they searched our home, it no longer felt like our home, and my wife would just say, she's like, I do not want to live here anymore. I can't live here anymore. They destroyed it. It's just a violation. So I was grateful that I was home and not somewhere else, but it was just weird also living in a home that I knew, because of the financial nature of my crime, that I was going to lose.
That's mad. And so I'm curious, like, so then what happens? So you obviously, what? So you're in prison, but what happens to your wife? Like, you don't have any income when you're in prison.
The so I had a little bit of income, but it was I people found out I used to be a personal trainer, so
Oh, yeah.
I started training people. And prison economy is way different than the other economy, so people might laugh a little bit, but I made twice as much as any other quote unquote trainer in the prison. I got $5 for a half-hour session, where everybody else was getting $5 for a 1-hour session. So I was doing very well for myself, but I was able to. What was nice was my family was so generous and so helpful, but I felt so horrible at their generosity. It actually made me feel like crap. I didn't feel worthy of their generosity for what I had done. So it was really nice for me to be able to generate income so I could pay for my commissary. In prison, you have something called commissary. You can buy your toiletries, you can buy crappy sweatshirts, and you can actually buy sneakers. You can buy different things on commissary. So I was able to after the first few months, I could basically support myself. I could support myself in prison, but my wife on the outside, she had just launched this new business, and it was doing well, but not enough to maintain our home. So we had to find her. We found her an apartment that she moved into, and her life was hell. Honestly, it was, the business that she had started was vintage furniture. So the two of us would go to, we'd go to estate sales, we would go to flea markets, and that's really hard work. You go, it was enjoyable, it was very real and very, very raw, but it's hard. And she's by herself buying a mid-century dresser that weighs 300 pounds and relying on the kindness of strangers to help her get it into her truck. And then when she gets to the store, trying to figure out how she can get it out of the, it was just, she was working 16-hour days just to keep a roof over her head and food in the fridge, because there was no more money. And, she had to get the business off the ground. So her life, was completely destroyed. And, it makes me think of when there was a lot of arguments that stemmed from this, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Oh God, yeah.
And, because she said, she would say to me, she's like, you told me it was okay. You lied to me. You told me it was okay. What's going to happen to our lives? And I remember at one point, and I feel so shitty saying it, but it's just such a truth, that when we were arguing one time, I actually, in my head, I was like, why is she so angry? She's got this new business. She's amazing. She's beautiful. She's smart. She's going to be fine. Like, my life is over. Like, she's only mad. And I feel so crappy for saying this, but it was just where my mind was. I was like, she's mad because, she's not going to get the nice things anymore. And it's like, that's why she's mad. And so while I'm thinking all this, when we're arguing, it's, in my head, I'm not saying it. And she might have read my mind. She was sitting at the edge of our sofa, like, sitting, when you're arguing with somebody and you're sitting on the edge of something, like, you don't even know how you're holding on because you're so on the edge of it. She was so on the edge of the sofa, hands in her head in her hands, tears rolling down her face. And she just looked up. She must have read my mind. She's like, do you want to know why I'm sad? She's like, I'm sad because my dreams for us have been destroyed. And it was just so humbling. And so I was like, I can't believe I was just thinking everything that I was thinking. I can't believe I allowed my mind to go there. Like, she had dreams for us in the future, and she had an idea of what our life was going to be, and this certainly wasn't it. So it was really hard on her. And that's one of the things that, with all the work that I've done to get to where I am today, it's one of the things that I still struggle with.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. That's like real heartbreak, man. Like, you were smiling when you told me, like, it was humbling. I was like, that's painful.
It
Wow.
was very painful.
So you really did, like, you lost everything.
I lost absolutely. So I lost everything. I still, it's weird. I still own two of my homes, but the government has, because I still owe money to the government, there are liens on the property. So really they're not mine. They're mine in name only, but if I was to sell them, they get the proceeds to cover the damages for what I did. So they're only in my name. So when I say, I lost everything, I really did: the cars, the watches, the career. I was in prison for about 4 months when my wife came to visit me. It was December 22nd. So it was 3 days before Christmas. And, I knew there was something. I was looking in her eyes, and I just knew there was something there, and she didn't want to tell me. And I kept digging and digging and digging. And then finally she said, "I'm leaving you." So, I lost my wife. And, the materialistic things, they hurt so badly at the time, but what it really was, and this was what I really lost, was my identity, who I am as a human being, my self-worth, my feeling of being enough, was so inextricably tied to my things and my ability to purchase those things. When they all disappeared, I lost any sense of myself. I lost my identity. I had no idea who I was. All I knew that I was the man that fucked up his life and the life of the woman he loves. That's all I was. So I felt alone with the man who destroyed everything. And it was pure shame and pure guilt and self-loathing and lost. And the other thing was, so when I first, my fraud was really, it was all done on my laptop. So it was really, hitting the enter button or clicking the mouse to send that first email. And to perpetuate the fraud. And when I did that, I did not know that what I was doing was illegal, but my heart told me not to do it. There was a voice inside, a higher self said, "Don't do it." And every time I clicked that enter button, every time I clicked that mouse, it started screaming louder and louder. And it was speaking, my inner voice was speaking through literal words and through also physical manifestations, where I would think about what I was doing and my heart would tighten up. It would just, my heart, almost like a heart attack, would grip. And I ignored it and I ignored it and just pushed it down and plowed forward. By the time I got in prison and everything happened, losing everything, and my wife telling me that she was leaving me, that voice, basically my heart locked itself up and that voice disappeared. It just completely disappeared. It was like, you ignored me for too long. And that emptiness without that voice, losing my sense of self, losing any sense of self-worth, that's far worse than losing any kind of material thing I could think of. And then compounding on top of that, you had mentioned it before, the word freedom. I think, I know I certainly did. And to take for granted the fact that when you leave your house, you can choose whether you take a right or left. You can choose that you leave your house. It sounds ridiculous, but that is like a freedom now that I don't take for granted. Mm-hmm. And to lose freedom, it's really hard to describe.
God, I can't even really, that's like that's like the equivalent of being dead, like the living dead. I'm trying to think of it. I can't compare, but I definitely know those moments where you're at complete rock bottom. I remember being, when I was in care for my eating disorder, the point where everything's been ripped away. You have no freedom. But you've caused it for yourself on some level. And the guilt and the shame that comes with that, you're like, you fucking fucked it now. The feeling that comes with that, it's not even like it's happened to you. You've literally done it to yourself. And you know that you didn't know any better. You didn't know it, well, you knew better, but it's like you could say that about anyone with an eating disorder, with an addiction, a drug addict or whatever. We know better, but that sometimes I think some people have to go through that, because that's just how they learn, with a great fall.
I think, I mean, I agree with that 100%. I think, we can sit and say that we knew better, but there's also, I'm a firm believer that at every given moment, we're all doing the best that we can. And I
Yeah.
think, I may have known better, but just that sense of inadequacy and that fear and that worth, this was how I knew how to do it. I'm not condoning my actions in any way, shape, or form, but it's just like I was doing the best I can with the mental tools that I had at that time, and it just, and to your point, I love the word that you used, ripped away when you were talking about your own situation. It's just ripped away, and caused by our actions. That is such a huge amount of shame for that, and it consumed me. It literally ate me alive. And
Good.
when you said it was like a death, I think I think in terms of almost like it was like an extended ego death.
Well, yeah.
Where and I think that was it was just everything stripped away. I was very fortunate that I went to the lowest security facility that is available here in the States, and my safety was never a concern. And all things considered, where I was actually, our landscaping looked nice. We had picnic tables outside. We could eat lunch outside. I mean, I was really fortunate. I met some of the nicest and most interesting people I've ever met. It was other white collar guys and nonviolent drug offenders. So I'm so grateful for that. But I think, and I know just from listening to a lot of your stuff and even just speaking right now, it's the mental prison, and the mental prison that we build for ourselves
Yeah.
is just so crippling. I know for me, it got to the point, it was, after she told me she was leaving me, and I really, that really not, I don't know how what was it? That was almost like a bit of the nail in the coffin of
That
really
is
the
the name.
damage that I had done. That was like the culmination of everything. So my brain came up with an image of what it would look like, what my own suicide would look like. And it in the beginning, the monkey mind gave me this short film of what it would look like to blow my brains out. I was actually in the basement of one of the houses I own. And at first, the monkey only flashed it a couple of times, and I would wave it off. I'd wave it off and think about something else. But then this thought, this horrible thought, played on repeat over and over every second of every day for 4 months straight. And it got to the point where I could, for some reason in this vision, I was wearing a black hood over my head. Maybe that was pure shame that I didn't even want to see myself, and that's what my brain concocted. But it was sitting in a chair in the basement of one of the homes I owned, and I don't know where this pistol was hidden, but I pull it out and I place it in my mouth, and the vision grew so real. And even to this day, telling you this story right now, I can taste the linen. I can literally taste the linen. I can feel the cold steel of the barrel. That's how real this became, because it became so ingrained in my neural pathways. And it wouldn't stop. It just wouldn't fucking stop. And, it was funny when you were saying, not what you were saying was funny, but when you think about having a heart attack when you're going to sleep at night, I spent those 4 months every single night. They count us. Prisoners are counted. You're counted multiple times throughout the day to make sure nobody escapes. And there's a 10 p.m. count. I used to wait for that one, because it actually meant I always went to sleep after the 10 o'clock count. So just wait for that count. But I would also dread it, because that was like the culmination of the entire day of that vision playing over and over again. And I would rest my head on the pillow. Every night it was the same thing. It was, please make it stop. Please make it stop. Why won't it fucking stop? Please make it stop. Please kill me in my sleep. Please kill me in my sleep. Just please do not let me wake up. And that's how I would go to sleep every single night for those 4 months. And for those 4 months, every time I woke up, I was utterly devastated to see the light of a new day, that I didn't die. And
So,
it was horrible.
yeah. but it's so natural when you're in that place, because you're you're giving yourself an out. And you know, those dark thoughts, they exist because they're giving you a plan B. Like, it's saying, look, this is the easy option. Here's another way that you can escape. Okay, it's not buying things, but you can escape. You can escape. You can't buy anything, but what's another way you can escape? Oh, I know. Like, just kill yourself. That's another, like, that's, I think when all of your coping strategies are taken away, and you, like, I went through the same when I was in eating disorder recovery, and I can still get it now. If I'm uncomfortable to the point where I'm faced with myself and I don't want to see myself or whatever's coming up, that pathology will still come up. Like, why don't you just kill yourself? It would be easier if you were dead. Just don't wake up. And I know it's not like true, it's just the story, but I'm like, I remember a time when that was all I would think, because it was the only escape. And I think when we've not been taught as a society to really feel like, be with ourselves, even if the nature of that is really fucking uncomfortable, and it's like, look at yourself. Like, if we've not been taught how to deal with that, it's no wonder. And I think it's sad in a way. I guess I'm wondering, what was the turning point for you? Because, like, people are going to prison and stuff, and I don't believe, like, I genuinely believe they should be in, like, psychotherapy every couple of days in prison, because these are the people that need help. Like, they're
Uh,
misunderstood and they're just put in a box, you're a criminal, boom. Like,
I'm glad that you mentioned a lot of that. And I'm curious if you, because I know it's a coping strategy, and I love that you brought that up and that you shared that story. For me, as painful as it was also, it gave me a bit of relief, because I was like, I can end this. And I really did start planning how I was going to kill myself, because I had to make it stop. I had to make this vision stop. It was driving me
yeah.
absolutely insane. And I'm curious for you, when you were going through that, was it almost like a little bit of comfort knowing that you have that out? Like, as
Yeah.
scary as it is and as permanent as it is, it's almost like it's comfort in killing yourself, which is just such a horrible thing to think of, but that's
But
how low, you know.
yeah, it's low, but everyone's so scared and saying, if you give yourself permission to do that, you're going to do it. Well, actually, if you give yourself permission, it's like binge eating. It's not exactly the same. I'm not going to say that. Like, I have been suicidal, and I just want to say, I'm triggering someone now. Like, it's not what I mean. I have been with this darkness. But the when you're telling yourself you can't do it, you can't do it, it makes that reality perpetuate itself more. It makes the whole thing bigger than it is. And it's sad. It's really fucking sad that that's the only way we're taught. Like, and we think, well, this is too painful to bear. I hate myself that much. What's the point? I don't. It is the deep self pity and complete archetype of the victim. But what's more empowering than actually saying, you can do that if you want? Like, Teal Swan got hounded for it, saying, if, okay, that it's a plan B. You can have that as a plan B. That's comforting, because most of the time when you actually come to it, like, maybe I'm just being a devil's advocate, but the amount of people that are like, no, don't think that, life's worth living. Think of all the people that you'd upset. Great. So now I feel guilty for thinking it.
Right.
I feel worse than I felt before. Like,
Right. It's God, I mean, I think when I was in that state, I couldn't see a way out. I mean, I think that's the other thing,
yeah,
is there's no way out. The blinders are on. And also in prison, so I think it's important to note, I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't share with anybody. I can't share on the phone because phone calls are monitored. I can't share an email because emails are read. I didn't dare tell any of my fellow inmates who cared for me very much. I mean, I had some really good friends in there, but I was concerned that out of concern, they would tell a guard, if you mention suicide in prison, you get locked in solitary.
yeah, yeah.
And the idea of being locked in solitary, I was like, that is not going down. So that scared the hell out of me. So I had to bottle it up. I just had to bottle it up. And, you asked what the turning point was, and it was pretty much, I think, the universe stepping in and helping me. I'd started planning how I was going to kill myself. I was like, I can hang myself in the woods. I worked in the kitchen, so I had access to knives, but the knives weren't all that sharp. I was like, that's not really, that's not an option. The woods seemed like an option. Then I was scared of going into the woods, because then if I got caught, I get charged with an escape and I get an extra 2 years onto my sentence. That was a little bit frightening, but I was in motion to do it. And then it was a Wednesday afternoon. I checked my email, and I got an email from my best friend of 30 years, my friend Sean. Hey man, can I come this weekend to visit you? I said, yeah, you can come visit me. There's not too many people who are like, hey, can I come to prison? And Sean's that guy that I trust my life with. 30 plus years, amazing human being, so strong, so just has always been there for me. And I'm like, I can tell Sean, I can finally get this off of my chest. I can share with somebody. It'll feel so good to let this demon out of me. So Sean comes on a Saturday. So I had to wait a couple of days. It was just the longest couple of days. You can't even imagine. And I was so excited. I get to tell Sean, I get to get this off of my chest. He buys some food from the vending machine, and we sit down in our seats, and I go to open my mouth to tell him to let this out, to just fucking let it go. Before I can say a word, Sean starts speaking. His life is a complete mess. He's getting a divorce. He's got money issues. He's got work issues. He's just not happy. There is such a sadness in his voice that really tears at me and makes me so upset. And it dawned on me that Sean drove 2 hours to come to prison to see me. He needed his friend. And when I said that I had no worth, and I was worthless, and I had no identity, at that moment, I realized that I had worth and that I had value. And that literally was the moment that my life changed.
I love that. So, that makes me happy.
I'm actually, it's funny. I mean, I've told this story before, but I'm choking up a little bit thinking about it, because it was just that, it was that big. And funny enough, I never told Sean. I didn't have to. That night when I went to sleep, I didn't pray for death to take me over. When I woke up the next morning, I wasn't disappointed at the light of a new day. I still felt crappy, but it was like, that was the turning point. That was the turning point. And then the universe, just to reinforce it, my mom flew up from North Carolina to my aunt's house in Connecticut. They made the drive the following weekend to visit me. Because my aunt said, she's like, your emails, we were getting very deep in email. She's like, you never said anything, but I knew that something wasn't right. So they came the weekend after, just to, I think, reinforce the universe's message that I had value. And, it was from there that I began my deep inner journey of self-discovery and rebuilding and reinventing and recreating my life.
I love that. So, okay. Wow. I'm interested. What practices did you start doing when you're at that point? Because, when people are at that point, like when I get clients and they're really at the lowest of the low, it's like, what small steps can we take? What were the practices that really started to bring you out of that?
There were, and I do them to this day. There were 3 practices that, and I do a lot of other stuff, but if I was forced to pick 3, if for some reason somebody was like, you can only continue 3 practices for the rest of your life, they would be the ones I started in prison: meditation, stream of conscious journaling, and gratitude practice. Mm-hmm. Meditation, just because it puts us in touch with ourselves, and it allows the observation of those dark thoughts, not being those dark thoughts, observing those dark thoughts, and any thought for that matter, really, but knowing that we're not the sadness, we're observing the sadness, and just getting in touch with ourselves for that sake. Stream of conscious journaling is just so brilliant, because it allowed me to dump the crap out of my brain, get it onto the pages, And what I started realizing when I was doing it, and I still love doing it to this day, is the stuff that keeps coming up. I'm like, I'll put stars next to it and I start connecting the dots. And I was like, these are my limiting beliefs. Anything that is really a sticking point, I'm like, I identify themes and I realize that some of those are my limiting beliefs. And so that allows me to then work through there. And then gratitude was just, people talk about gratitude so much, but I think it's just one of the most important things we can do. And I started in prison, and literally, I'd started rebuilding my life, but I'm still in prison. And I remember we were up on a mountain. We had the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets.
Nice.
I mean, they were gorgeous. They were like nothing we've ever seen before. I mean, there were some moments it was actually kind of beautiful. You've got 100+ inmates standing outside basically in silence, watching the sunset because it was that gorgeous. Some of these guys, you would think that maybe in their lives, I don't mean to judge, but the billionaire, I don't know if he ever took the time to stop and savor the sunset, but there he's out there just, so immersed in it. So it was one sunrise. It was just so beautiful. I stopped and looked at it, and I went to the library. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning or so. And, I pull out my journal and I just wrote, I'm grateful for this morning sunrise and that I'm alive to see it. And that started my gratitude practice, and just being able to find things to be grateful for in prison through all of that created such a solid foundation and just rewires the brain from scarcity to abundance.
Mm-hmm.
So I think anybody who is at rock bottom, I know meditation can be a little trickier. I think people struggle with meditation because, particularly when you're at rock bottom, the brain is just on hyperdrive. It's just like going absolutely.
Nice place to be.
It's not a nice place to be. But to anybody listening who wants to at least start, two things very easy is the journaling, pen and paper. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about what's coming out. Capture it all. Dump it on paper. Let it out of you. Get it out of you. And then gratitude. I don't remember how I started the practice outside of writing about the sunset, but I tried a bunch of different things. Sometimes I would do lists. Sometimes I would write a page on one thing I was grateful for. I would just go into detail. Why am I grateful for this thing? Like the other events that had to occur to make me grateful for that one event. Like it just starts opening up the avenues of things. I was like, oh, because of this, that means that person did that for me. So I'm grateful for them because they met me somewhere and did that. I mean, just it can expound. And that totally changed the rewiring of my brain, where now I live a comfortable life, not rolling in money. Honestly, I think there were months that I made in a month what I make now in a year, but I have more than I could ever wish for because I live in abundance. I have a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn, and I just am so fortunate for what I have. And that is 6 years of doing gratitude practice.
Yeah. Gratitude's the way forward. I honestly believe it. Like, that's when my abundance started shifting, because I was just coming from I have rather than I do not have, So I love those practices for sure. So I guess we need to wrap it up because it's been long. Might have to go into 2 parts. I don't know. Well, I think just keep it in one and people can binge listen it. But I guess I want to ask, like, now, what are your hopes and goals and dreams for the future?
Beautiful question. My hopes and dreams for the future would be, I'd really like to impact as many people as I can. I, through this journey, have created a mantra that I live by, and it's live fully, connect deeply, and impact many. And my dreams and my goals would be to live up to that mantra, to live a life that is rich and meaningful. And when I do that, when I live a life that's rich and meaningful, it allows me to, and I have a very long definition of what it means to live fully, but I know what it is and I embrace it. And part of it is having conversations like this, meeting people like you, and being vulnerable and having this open discussion, that is part of living fully. And I believe when we live fully, it allows us to connect deeply.
Yeah.
And I think that connection is just so critically important. You know, I've realized that it's not the things, it's the connections that we have and our ability to relate to one another and to share our stories. And I love, love, love just connection, just sitting down across from someone and skipping over the small talk bullshit and getting into, tell me what you think. Tell me what gets you going, and having those connections. And then when I connect deeply like that, it gives me the ability to impact many. And I think that my whole story, my situation has turned into what was literally the worst hellish thing that I've been through so far in my life, has turned into the greatest gift I've ever received. And I feel like I have an obligation to have these conversations, to help as many people with what I've learned. And that would really be what my dream is to live by my mantra and to be able to impact as many people as possible with what I've learned as a result of my choices and my experiences.
I love that. I feel the same. I think, I know it must be a Scorpio thing. Connection is, for me, the most important thing on beyond anything. It is the most important. So, and I think through that, then we're able to impact more people. But as well, you turned your story into a gift. Don't forget that. Like, a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't turn their mess into their message. They live in the problem. They don't live in the solution. And it's people like you who are, they're the people that are catalysts for others because they've done it. And it's proof that you can.
And that's what I think I want to really do, and to show people, for anybody who is feeling at rock bottom, just to know that it is temporary, and to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and to be for somebody that light at the end of the tunnel, that there will be a time, when you make it through the shit, there's a gift waiting on the other side that is yours, and it's yours for life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just so important to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Well, on that note, so what, if people want to connect with you, because I know people are going to want to connect with you, mainly for prison stories, which is probably the second thing I asked you. But whatever. But if people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
The best place to reach me, where I live the most, is on Instagram, and it is Craig_Stanland. And then my website is craigstanland.com. And I would also love if anybody would, my TEDx is How I Learned My Greatest Worth in Federal Prison. I'd be honored if you watched it. And if it resonates with you, I'd be honored if you shared it with anybody that you think may need to hear that message.
Yeah, I'm for sure going to share everything in the show notes. Yeah, how amazing. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. This has been
your story.
This has been an absolute pleasure.
It's been emotional.
It's been emotional, but I want to acknowledge you really quickly, because you hold space, and felt so safe and comfortable having this conversation with you. And I would just want to acknowledge you for that, and thank you for that, for creating such a safe environment for me to be able to do that and to have the conversation that we just had. So thank you.
Thank you. That's what I'm good at, holding space.
It's definitely good at it.
I feel like we only scratched the surface. I think we need to do another one.
There is. I'll give a teaser if there is another one. Another practice that people can do, because if you're at rock bottom, it's very hard to trust yourself. And I'm just going to leave it at this: making and keeping commitments to yourself. Surest path to rebuilding. It starts kind of with confidence. But when we have confidence, we believe in ourselves, and when we believe in ourselves, we trust ourselves. That's really the main goal of that. But I don't care if it's I commit to doing my yoga today. Do that yoga, commit to it. Use the words, state your name, commit to doing yoga today. And then acknowledge yourself and pat yourself on the back. Start small. But that's a teaser if we want to do part 2, because there's a lot of other practices, but that was really one of the critical ones for me to rebuild that trust that I lost.
I agree. I did that. It's different, but still the same when I was at my rock bottom and I was like really sick and really thin, and it was all driven by diet culture. I said, I pledge to quit dieting forever. And every day I would say, I pledge to quit dieting forever. And I said it every day, and it's taken me like 7 years to get out of that mentality. But I always was like, I commit that to myself. And even if it was like one day at a time, it's a big one. So thanks for sharing that one.
I literally, you probably can't see it. My hair is standing up on my arms because of that word, pledge. And I think that's something so powerful in that. When we make a pledge, when we make a vow, when we make a commitment, but that word pledge is so powerful. So I just literally, my hair is standing up on my arms because you gave me the chills.
Maybe it's something to do with my British accent.
That and the power of the word.
Yeah, I love it.
I do love your British accent, by the way.
It's, where I'm from, like my accent is the worst in the UK. It's voted the worst accent in England.
Where are you from?
The Midlands, near
Okay.
Birmingham.
I was going to ask if it's Birmingham because I've heard that about the Birmingham, but I have a soft spot for Birmingham because Black Sabbath is from Birmingham. So
yeah, he's from like round the corner from me.
Really? That's one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, really?
Yep.
It's the bites bats heads off.
He had his moment of doing that. He did.
It's so cool. We've got some gems here in Birmingham. I'm not sure what else. Peaky Blinders. Have you watched that?
I am on season 3.
Oh, it gets really good.
Yeah, I'm on season 3. So yeah, if there's anything, it's the Russians just came into the picture. He just got married.
Oh.
Thomas Shelby just got married. And now they are doing business dealings with the Russians. So
He's just got married to Grace.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell you anymore.
Oh my God, your face. I could see you light up. You're like, wow, you know it's coming. All right, I can't wait to watch. And I will report back and say, oh my God, this is so good.
He's literally, you need to watch it tonight.
I was like, okay. I'm not doing anything else tonight. Why did I have to think about that?
Yeah. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
So Game of Thrones, I watched for a while, and then if I remember correctly, it was right around the time that I got arrested. So Game of Thrones got put on hold. And this is interesting enough. People would smuggle in DVDs into prison. So we actually had Game of Thrones in prison. And I started watching it, but my ex and I had watched it and loved it. And it was really hard for me. So I fell out of it and I haven't gone back to it, but I do want to. I got to Red Wedding.
I was about to say, the Red Wedding, bear that in mind as you continue to watch Peaky Blinders.
Oh, that's good. You're good.
I couldn't watch after that episode for a while.
Wow. All right.
That's probably a big spoiler, but Peaky Blinders full of twists and turns. Cool. So I'm going to stop recording. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone send your Netflix recommendations to Craig.
Yes, please do. I have a lot of catching up to do.
I love that. So thank you so much for tuning into the podcast, and I'm so happy that you stayed this far. And please give Craig a follow. Let me know what you thought of this podcast, and if you want to see more of him, let me know and we'll get him back on the show. And in the meantime, have the best week, and thanks for stopping by. See you next time.